Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Dave Michaels from Talking Points. I'm with Zeus from ZK Research. Hello, Zeus.
Hey, how you been?
Good. We've been attending a lot of events. We kind of attended the same event, but differently. We both went to Nice Interactions. You went to the Vegas one, and I went to the one in London. We've got to compare some notes on that. And then after we do that, we'll talk a little bit about, I guess, Five9 had a pretty big announcement with Salesforce. And so this is a CCaaS episode of RealTime Recorded.
Yeah, with a bit of a UCaaS flavor, I would think.
Well, the UCaaS, that's a good point. Well, don't give away. You're spoiling the surprise here. So let's talk a little bit about the two events here first off, because I don't think we've done this before, but we've attended different versions of the same event. I think your event in Vegas was much bigger than the one in London. And it was I believe, from what I understand, the same keynote, but the keynote was on a smaller stage, didn't have quite the same effects you had. But I was impressed with that keynote. I thought the effects were really good. What'd you think?
Yeah, I don't know if it worked the same, but Barack had a drop cloth almost in front of him on a screen in which they projected what looked like kind of holograms in front of him to sort of bring a lot of the things to life, which was pretty cool. I've not seen a keynote done that way. I went to HP Discover, which was done in the Sphere, and so that was a little bit of a different look. But this one was for a general kind of main stage session. That was pretty interesting to do it that way.
Yeah, no, he didn't have the front. He didn't have the 3D effect or the holographic effect. He just had the screen behind him in London, but it was still pretty impressive storytelling of all the things going on behind him, the traffic I'm thinking of, and the storytelling he did. So both interactions had keynotes by Barack and Barry. Barack does more of a vision keynote, and Barry does more of a product keynote. I think yours were on different days. I had it all in one day, which I prefer, to be honest. And I think the celebrities were different. You had Nicole Kidman. And what's that?
Yeah, Nicole Kidman. I just missed her on the meet and greet too. So.
That's too bad. I would have liked to have met her. We had in Europe. We had Stephen Bartlett, which is kind of a version of us, but richer. Very active on social media, just a little more wealthier than we are. But yeah, so the keynotes were, of course, the high point. They also had the breakout sessions at both events, I'm sure. But you had two big announcements. We had one of those announcements. So let's do the one we shared, which was Empower. You want to go ahead and kick that one off?
Yeah, so that in a lot of ways they kind of rolled up all their AI capabilities. They added some new ones, but they created a single kind of AI offering to empower agents, right? And it's interesting that they've taken a dramatically different approach to CCaaS than the other vendors. Most vendors partner in the areas of QM and WFM and WEM and things like that. They just build it all themselves. And in a lot of ways, that gives them kind of an interesting advantage because they've got a much bigger data set across a broader set of functions to be able to build from. And you can see that here. In fact, what was really impressive, I'm not sure who the customers they had on stage, but they had Hunter Douglas and Sony. And in both cases, both customers talked about how they chose NICE. And it wasn't like a de facto choice because they were our incumbent, so we just went with them. They both talked about, in fact, Hunter Douglas, I believe it was, went into excruciating detail about how they loaded all their information and asked it a bunch of random questions. And, they went from 26 vendors down to 7 vendors, down to 3 vendors. And NICE was the only one that could answer a significant volume of questions. In fact, in the last phase, they gave them 20 questions to answer. One of the 3 finalists answered 1 correctly. 1 got 6 correct, and NICE got 19. And so I think, I think from an AI perspective, there's a lot of questions about is it ready for prime time in contact centers. I think it is, but I think customers really need to do their homework and load their own data and see how it works. And I think Empower is a good offering because it simplifies deployment. It's kind of one product now, and I think without doing that, it gets it obviously can get kind of confusing for customers to figure out what they need. So
the customer they brought on stage in London was Lloyd's Bank, which was refreshing because they a lot of these European events they bring on Paul's Fish and Chips or something like that, some smaller company I haven't really heard of. But Lloyd's Bank, I mean, she gets up there and she starts rattling off all the different brands of Lloyd's Bank. I didn't know they had so many brands, all the different high street locations, all this. I mean, it was just like so pretty impressive account. I wondered, you talked about the Empower. I like the name. I have to say Empower is good. So it's the letter M in the word power. I'm getting a little tired of Engage. Everyone's naming their product and events and everything else Engage, which is kind of wearing off. And the M in Empower stands for experience memory. And so they're really trying to create a contact center that remembers everything, never forgets, and kind of like my wife. And
which in itself is pretty cool if it can do that, right? If it can actually
if they can pull it off, and then kind of what you were saying, a little different than what you were saying actually, because they are building it all out. And so Barack kept on using the term comprehensive and connected. So they're building it out, the comprehensive, which you touched on. But they're also building out a lot of connectivity to all the different partners you may have in a contact center. So they're trying to play both strategies, and that's how they do that memory trick. And that was a big part of Barack's keynote. With he did a fantastic little bit about how the customer has one mind, one memory, and sees all the interactions, where the different parts of a business, service, repair, marketing, whatever, all have different slices of memory, and so and it's so fragmented. So I really like what they're trying to accomplish there in that vision. But back to the name, I love the play on Empower, empowerment. It empowers agents, supervisors, business leaders, customers, etc. So I thought the naming was pretty clever, and kind of it's an evolution. I mean, you mentioned the Enlighten package. They announced previously Actions, Copilot, Autopilot. I guess they were actually launched at this event a year ago. And now they've more or less bundled them up with CX1, but it's not just a bundle, it's really more of an evolution because they've learned a lot over the past, since they launched it. And they're learning, to answer those questions you described, that generative AI isn't great out of the box. It needs enhancements. It needs a little more context, and that's what they're doing. They're making it more appropriate for verticals and a lot of industries that may not be that impressed with the general training of the internet. I think it's a nice evolved story, and I think that's the important thing about AI right now is the evolution. And so these early movers that are jumping into the space so quickly, they make some mistakes. They have some learning ahead of them, but they're evolving very quickly, and I think that's really important. Other big announcement.
I do think it's important for customers to understand that these systems are going to make mistakes, but that's okay. And the barrier to entry should be once you're better than people, and people make a lot of mistakes, right? So I think we've passed that threshold a long time ago.
That's going to be a debatable subject there. You're asking for a fight on that one, but not for me. I'm not going to debate you on that one. But let's get to the other announcement they made, which they did not make in Europe, but they probably will next year, which was their 1CX offering as NICE moves into UCaaS.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by this?
A little at first, and then I wasn't. So they're for $5 a month, they're going to white label a product and offer UCaaS. And when I talked to NICE about this, right, they do recognize that there's a bunch of customers that want to buy UCaaS and CCaaS together. they feel that at $5 a month, they can disrupt on price, where it's much harder for a UCaaS vendor to disrupt CCaaS on price, which is probably true. I did ask them about, Ring Central and that partnership, because, they've been partners for a while, and they just said Ring Central is aware that we're doing this. But, Ring, to quote John Rambo, I guess they drew first blood, right? They're the ones who rolled out their own, CCaaS product and disrupted that relationship. And so I think over time, Dave, every vendor is going to have its own integrated UCaaS, CCaaS. NICE becomes actually the first CCaaS vendor, which is kind of interesting, to actually have a full UCaaS suite. I know TalkDesk rolled out telephony a couple of years ago, but they're the only, NICE is the only one with a full meeting suite. And so that in itself is curious that none of the other ones have done this. I do think if you look historically at when customers do buy UCaaS and CCaaS together, it's typically the UCaaS buyer pulling through CCaaS. But part of that might be that just the CCaaS buyer didn't really have an option, right? So it's a bit of a chicken egg thing, but I do think it's good for NICE to do this. They did make it very clear they're not going to go out and try and compete on for UCaaS sake. You have to be a CX1 customer if you want to be able to buy this. But I do think at $5 a month, for a product that a lot of people think is becoming a commodity, I think they're going to have success.
Well, you touched on a lot there. I want to respond to a number of different points there. TalkDesk was moved into voice, not necessarily UCaaS, and NICE's move is a little surprising. Amazon, Google, Genesis, and I'll even say Gartner don't agree on the UCCC story. But we're hearing over and over that the UC and CC, we're hearing it from Cisco, we're hearing it from 8x8, we're hearing it from a number of vendors that the two do go together. Seems to be, in fact, I'll throw Ring Central in there too. They seem to go together more closely and more aligned in the smaller businesses where you have maybe an IT decision-making process. And so you touched on the Ring Central thing here. So it's interesting because Ring has moved into CCaaS with Ring CX. And of course, NICE is a leader in the space, and so much more robust CCaaS. And that works great for Ring because they're still selling NICE. And if they have a customer that doesn't need all that complexity, they can sell Ring CX. And it's the opposite story now with NICE, because Ring is going to have a much more elaborate, much more mature UCaaS offering. But NICE is going to have this, we don't know a lot. I don't know a lot about 3CX. I looked at their website. It doesn't seem like a very robust solution, but it might be. I mean, they had I think they had simple messaging, and they don't have anything like Clip, to my understanding, and they don't think they have room systems, but a lot of organizations don't want this stuff. We know that a lot of organizations don't want this stuff. It was actually Interactive Intelligence had a fairly simple UCaaS offering that never did well in the UCaaS MQ, but they did fine selling it to organizations that didn't really need a lot of advanced features. And so, I worked at a Fortune 500 that had an analog phone PBX, and so during an IP era. So a lot of organizations don't really need sophisticated features. So I think that's where those are going to fit. Let's see. You also talked a little bit about. I know. Sorry about. I don't know if the noises were coming across or not. Okay. I also want to talk a little bit about the name, just like I talked about Empower name. I thought the 1CX name was clever because they sell CX1, so it's the same symbols or same characters. But you mentioned the white label from 3CX. So it's basically a play on 3CX. It's a very clever name, in my opinion. Okay, did we cover that one? Or is there anything else to say on that one?
No, I just think, that this is something they've, we'll see how the rest of the CCaaS vendors respond here. I am curious to see if others follow suit now.
I wanted to touch a little bit about the $5. Actually, you mentioned the $5. The thing that's tricky about that is we don't really know. That's a disruptive price. It's obviously meant to be a disruptive price. Well, we don't really know because they're not selling it by itself. They're only selling it if you have CX1.
Right.
So we don't know if CX1 is subsidizing that price or not. It seems like it would be if they're not selling it on its own, but we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it they really have to sell to be successful either, to be quite honest. It's there just I think to keep some of the UC vendors out of their accounts and stuff. So even if they aren't making a ton of money on it, it's a good enough offering for customers that want it, right? So
I'm not too surprised that NICE has moved into UCaaS. What surprises me more is that they did it the way they did it with a partnership as opposed to either developing it on their own or making an acquisition. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would imagine that they're probably building their own stack, and you might see them roll it out there in the future. I mean, frankly, Dave, it's all the same channels, right? So taking them and making them employee facing versus, I mean, you need video and things like that, which you don't really have in the contact center. But for the most part, there's not really a whole lot of difference between UCaaS and CCaaS other than who you're delivering. Now, I want to be clear. CCaaS is a lot more complicated, right? Building the dashboards, things like that. But the media and things like that are roughly the same. And so it is something they could do. And I suspect down the road, you'll probably see them roll their own stack. And they'd probably just bring it in under the 1CX brand. And customers may not even know that they're, that it moved over to a different platform other than the UI might change a little bit or something.
All right. I just realized I don't have any banners up here, so let me put a banner for our next topic, 5.9. What's that?
You got to have the banner.
Got to have the banner because people have to fast forward to the video when they're not watching it live. So let's talk a little bit about 5.9 and their announcement with Salesforce. Now, what's interesting about this one really is that 5.9's got a pretty long history with Salesforce.
Yeah. They do. They've been expanded. Actually, what I thought was kind of notable too is they actually became, I didn't realize this, Salesforce has a partnership status called Summit status, which is the highest level of partnership you can have as a vendor. And they're the only CCaaS vendor to have achieved that. And I was a little surprised with all the other CCaaS vendors that work so closely with Salesforce that there'd only be one. So kudos to them on that. I think in this case, what they're doing is they're integrating with Einstein conversational insights, specifically to improve QA. And I know Einstein's had kind of a bumpy road. I think it's a fine AI engine. I just think that the data in Salesforce sometimes is a little suspect. Not any fault of Salesforce, just the way people use it. And so the more data that I think 5.9 can bring into Einstein, the better. Actually, the better it is for Salesforce. And so I look at this as a real win-win. It gets Salesforce a better performing Einstein, gets 5.9 more tightly coupled to Salesforce, and ultimately, the customer winds up being the beneficiary of it.
Yeah, I actually, this is really very clever. I want to get to that point, but I was talking to somebody else about the 5.9 Salesforce relationship, and we were debating whether this was generation 3 or generation 2 of BYOT, bring your own telephony. But the first generation was kind of foundational, call control, basic stuff like that. The second generation, you could argue, just kind of a more robustness. They, support for more tones and real-time transcription and call dispositions, things like that. So they just kind of been building that out. And then this third generation, or 2.5, depending how you count, is really about AI. And I think we're on the precipice of some real big AI battles because everybody wants you to use their AI, right? And so I'm already seeing this with meetings because all the meetings platforms have summarization. So if you're using Zoom and you get a nice summary from Zoom, and I'm using Teams and I get a nice summary from Teams, you'll send me a Zoom link and I'll say, oh no, I want to use my Teams link because I want the summary. And so we're already seeing this kind of battle over AI, and so now that this is kind of a offensive play on Five9's part, saying go ahead and use their AI, go ahead and use Einstein, but you can still use ours. And so they've kind of they're kind of forking the media stream, so it can go into Einstein and let Einstein collect this conversational information for their AI and their insights, but you still have full access to the Five9 AI suite, which of course they're doubling down on and building out pretty heavily. And then the why I called it an offensive play is because as you mentioned, they're already a summit partner. Yeah. But now you've got the interest of the Salesforce sales team, because they see this as a way of selling more Einstein services and more Salesforce services. So yeah, they're going to want to push more Five9, leveraging that relationship, leveraging their AI. I think it's very close.
Yeah, I do actually. I hadn't considered the impact that the uplift Five9 will get from the Salesforce, if you will. But I do think that's a notable part of it. I think part of that is achieving that level of partnership. But I think, like I said, Salesforce has had a bit of a bumpy road getting Einstein and working in customers' hands. So
who hasn't though? I mean, who has? I mean, Google's telling people that glue their cheese on their pizza. We're on the the pioneers get the arrows in the back, right? Whatever you want to call it. See some of the new features, real-time transcription, embedded call recording. All that's going to be with Einstein conversational insights. I think it's pretty clever, and I think that we've seen Five9 kind of play this card before. If you really want Salesforce to be the center of the universe, you have to do certain things, which may not be in the best interest of the CCaaS provider. And so I think there's a lot of resistance from other CCaaS providers to do this, like fight over the AI, et cetera. So I think this is good. I don't know. We covered that one pretty good. Or is there anything left to say on that?
No, I think that I think they covered it pretty good. I think it's obviously good for Five9, and I think they're very heads down focused on AI now, like all the CCaaS vendors are. And so I think that the wars you indicated are coming, and ultimately I think the winners and losers are dictated by, like we saw at the NICE event, where customers actually talk about it worked this well on my data. And I certainly encourage customers to try it on your own data, because you have no idea how it's going to work until you try it on your own data. All these things can do a pretty good job out of the box with generic data, but ultimately you want it to work on your own, right? So, and we don't really have a good idea how what that's going to look like until we start seeing more customer deployments. And so I think for a lot of these vendors, voice of customer becomes very, very important, and being able to, that's one of the things I liked about the NICE event. They pointed out customer, after customer after customer that talked about what they were doing. And so hopefully that's a trend that we'll see at more and more events.
That's nice of you to say that, because I always expect you to say what I liked about this event was the golf course or the bike course or something like that. So,
it's hot. Yeah, you're not getting out to doing too much biking there.
You were actually in Vegas for several weeks, weren't you?
Yeah, 3 weeks in a row. So I had 7 events in 3 weeks there. So that's yay.
I think I'm going to manage to skip Vegas this year. I'm hoping to. But now it's time for summer, so should have a little bit of a slowdown in events and get some more golf and biking in.
Yeah. Speaking of events, I think both you and I have a call like in 3 minutes now. So.
All right. Well, we better head to it. So thanks for watching, and that wraps up this episode of Real Time Recorded.